Good evening and welcome to the channel. In today's episode, I am going to be harvesting these sad looking Adirondack potatoes. If you'd like to see me harvest this container of potatoes, stay tuned. The time has come for me to harvest these potatoes. This is the first container of Adirondack potatoes that I'll be harvesting. The other container isn't ready, so I'm going to pull out these potato tops and see what I have. I am just looking around in the container to see if I have any potatoes that are on the surface. Any potatoes I have on the surface, I will be using those as seed potatoes and replanting them. So far, no potatoes. Since this soil is relatively soft, I am just going to give these potato tops a good tug and see what comes up. I try and salvage as much soil as I can. So with every potato top I pull up, I am going to shake off the soil so that I don't lose any of it. As you can see, this container is pretty large. It's a 17-gallon container, so I will be shaking off a great deal of soil. And as you can see, I have potatoes. I'm so excited. This is the second time I've ever tried to grow Adirondack, blue Adirondack potatoes, and I'm pleasantly pleased thus far. I can say this will be a potato that I will grow again and again in the future. These are not large potatoes by any means, but they will eat. Look at those pretty babies. Here's a potato that's growing a little eye, so I'm going to take this one and replant it. Now, there are several different types of potatoes. I am not a potato expert, but I do know there are early potatoes, mid potatoes, and late potatoes. And I do believe these are early potatoes. And since I have a long season, I am going to take all of these potatoes that have eyes on them and repot them to see if I can get a second batch of potatoes. Now, what I'm checking for is to see if I have any knotted root. It doesn't appear that I do, so I'm just going to keep picking off the potatoes and putting them in the bucket. Here is another potato that has some small eyes on it, so this one is going to be replanted. I'm just moving the soil around with my hand because I don't want to use a trowel or a spade and damage my potatoes. So I'm just going to slowly and gently move the soil around and see if I can lift any of it up without damage. Now I will be using a small shovel. I'm just going to rake some of the soil onto the shovel with my hand. And again, try not to pierce any of my potatoes. I worked very hard on my soil in the fall, and my soil is turning out to be nice and light and fluffy. Just a beautiful soil for growing in. I do have worms in many of my containers, and I believe that that's also contributed to the beauty of my soil. So this soil is not dense like it was last year, and I do believe that I'm going to be able to get some nice potatoes out of here. It appears that if the tops on these potatoes would have lasted a little while longer, I would have gotten a larger harvest. If you see here, those tiny little purple dots, those would have been potatoes if they would have had an opportunity to form, but unfortunately, they did not. So my potato harvest is relatively small. But like I mentioned, that's okay. They will all eat. As I pull up the potato plants, I am finding potatoes, so let's speed this up. I have rooted around in this pot relatively deep, and I think I've gotten all of the potatoes. So now it's time to fertilize and replant those potatoes that had eyes on them. I've taken all the dried up pea vines and placed them inside of the container. They will eventually break down and either become food for whatever I grow in this container or food for the worms. Now, on top of that, I am fertilizing with my Espoma vegetable tone. Vegetable tone is what I use when I am planting food. Since this is a 17-gallon container, I am going to put several scoops in to make sure that I am fertilizing properly and that my food that's growing is going to get all the nutrients that it needs. I also include Osmocote. This is a flower vegetable Osmocote, so I'll take a scoop of this and add this to the container as well. It is a slow release fertilizer that will release over a 4-month time period. I'm also going to include some azomite rock dust. I'm just going to take 1 scoop and sprinkle it in. Now that I've added all of that fertilizer, I'm going to take my tiny shovel and just toss it around and mix it in the soil just a little bit. Now that I've gone ahead on and tossed up that fertilizer into the soil, I'm just going to mush it with my hands a little bit and make sure that I've gotten that soil around the edge of the container. Now, the piece de resistance for me is adding my sardines. This is just a regular old can of sardines in water that I'm going to dump in, and this will be the final fertilizer that I use today before I plant it up. Now, once I've dumped the sardines in, I'm just going to break it up and move it around. This project is almost done. So now I'm going to take the remaining soil that I had in my turquoise bucket off to the side, and I'm just going to place it back in the container before I pot it up. Now that the remaining soil is back into the container, I need to move it around, making sure it touches all the edges of the container, and readjust my drip wire. That's what this little brown cord is. It's my drip wire. I bet you want to see the harvest, right? Here we go. Now, it's not a lot of potatoes, and that's okay. I still have one other container I need to harvest. It's not ready yet. In the next couple of weeks, it should be. If you'd like to see me harvest that container, let me know in the description box below, and I'll be happy to take you along. Now, what I'm going to do is place these potatoes off to the side, and the ones that look like they are ready to sprout again, I am going to repot them. So let's get started. I'm trying to determine which one of these potatoes I want to replant and which ones I want to take in the house. I almost forgot. I had a seed potato that I wanted to put in the pot so that the worms will have some worm food. I'm going to go down about the length of my fingers and palm, and then I'm going to plant the potato. So I'm going to make a hole the length of my entire hand and then plant the potato. Do you see how dark and loose and rich this soil looks? It is amazing. I'm just randomly making a hole, plopping in a potato, and moving on to the next one. The potatoes have all been planted, so I'm going to take the mulch that I took off the pot initially and place it back on. I will be adding more mulch, but for right now, I'm just going to add this because this is all I have available to me. The reason why I'm placing mulch is to make sure that this pot stays moist, and that way I don't have to worry about excess watering. I want to thank everybody for coming along with me and watching me harvest these potatoes. I greatly appreciate everyone who watches my videos, comments, subscribes, and even shares. So do me a favor, do all of those things, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.